Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. Hi. I think you can tell I'm coming back to life with every episode because one, I'm talking faster / my normal speed. Two, I don't look like a complete trash bag anymore, but my hair is definitely like it's taking on a life of its own. Anywho, hi, welcome. These last couple episodes have been inspired by 2024, and it's illustrious use of plot twist and landmines to keep things interesting and to keep you on your toes. So, although this isn't the most fun thing to talk about, I want to do a bit of a deep dive today into blame. And I'm aware now that I'm kind of talking about a lot of the things I've talked about before in the past. And as I've certainly unraveled, peeled back the layers, shall we say, and gotten much deeper in my own personal work and development. But my clients are becoming more successful. They have more impact. They have more employees. They have more facilities. All of these things become so much more relevant, right? And so regardless of if you're just getting started, hi, welcome. Are you sure? You've been here for a minute. Sorry about that. Or you're somewhere in between. A creative, a leader, an entrepreneur, an employee. These last few are for you because we can all relate to what I'm going to be talking about. But for this particular episode, we're going to go deep into the blame game and why everybody loses when we play that particular game. And I mean, it's obvious there have just been one thing after another this year that it'd be really great if we could just find one finite point of pain and then do something about it. And we get so caught up in trying to figure this one thing out, we forget there are always a million variables, right? It's incredibly complex and multifaceted, and depending on so many different things, you have now arrived at your particular opinion or conclusion. And blame is just, it's the binary, right? And that's that level 2 energy, which we'll definitely talk more about. It is a seductive trap, and it feels really satisfying in the moment because we think we've solved the problem, but blame is so far from problem solving. It's actually distracting us and just keeping us stuck. So let's talk about why it is so tempting, but ultimately the laziest way of problem solving. And not only are you not actually finding any solutions, you are potentially sabotaging your future possibilities as well. So it's kind of a big deal. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into the psychology and the science behind this as well, and why and how blame affects our decision making. I'm also going to talk about why it is a waste of energy and it will impact your focus and ability to be successful. But then lastly, just like I do, I want to give you a couple of tactical strategies, a few things you can practice and try. You do you. If it resonates, I encourage you to give it a go. Don't think we're going to make a lot of progress if we continually invest our energy into trying to blame the others or the others, right? This whole investment over these last few years / decades / centuries has gotten us to where we are right now. And are you stoked on the current state of affairs? I didn't think so. So let's talk about, firstly, the psychology behind blame. I mean, why would we do anything because it feels good? Blame is rooted in our psychological wiring. It is an evolutionary shortcut, and it's designed to protect us from feeling shame or fear or vulnerability. Because when something goes wrong, the brain, the amygdala, the nervous system, the thing that kicks in when we think we're going to die, except for that our brain doesn't actually understand the difference between getting chased down, an alley by an axe murderer or like your boss sending you a shitty email. our brain is going to look for the culprit, the psycho axe murderer chasing you. And our favorite, Dr. Brene Brown, she is a leading researcher on shame and vulnerability. And she talks about it like this: blame is simply the discharging of discomfort and pain. It's a defense mechanism, not a solution. And my theory is, I'm not a scientist. I was going to say meteorologist, but that's an inside joke. So unless you're one person listening to this, I don't think you'll get it. My sense is we also associate a lot of blame to learning, which is why it pops up at the workplace, or why it pops up when you're attempting to do new things. Because if you think about when you were trying to learn new skills as a little kid, right? Like just like something benign, like tying your shoes, you could feel the frustration rippling off your caretakers. They had shown you how to do it. They see you trying to shortcut it and do the like crisscross, version of it, rather than like wrap the rabbit around the tree and through the woods or whatever. It's been a minute for me. I've been tying my shoes for a long time, and I don't have any little ones, and the ones that I do fucks with all have Velcro for probably this exact damn reason, that we could feel the pressure and the impatience and the disappointment and all of these like just negative emotions that were probably a little beyond us at the time. It just felt bad, and we were doing our best, and there had to be a fucking problem. And, our parents or caretakers thought it was us. We thought it was them. And now we're kind of hardwired to connect these experiences of skills development or mistakes with blame. And I don't know if that connected a dot for you, like you're welcome. But sort of as with all of these episodes, I hope that it gives you an opportunity to reflect back into your past when you've also experienced this feeling, the particular feeling I'm talking about in the episode, this one being blame, and just spend a minute with that. Like, where did this one first show up for you? That is this point of origin where your brain actually started to connect the dots, but like where these wires, these connections, pathways, thank you, BZ, these pathways were formed. And once you can see it, that's when you get to course correct. Blame is incredibly tempting because of the satisfaction it gives us in the moments. It gives us a sense of control. It protects us. Therefore, it feels like relief. So when we blame something or someone, it tricks us into thinking that we have some type of control over the chaos that we are actually successfully navigating. I mean, the fact that you're even listening to this is a goddamn miracle, right? And when we think about everything that's happened this year, to suggest there was one thing that could have been done differently in any of the situations, let alone all of the situations, like, please, my friend, if you have found that one thing, I would love to know. It protects us because when we blame, it externalizes any of our responsibility. And even if we're blaming ourselves, we're now suggesting that we've got control over the universe, which is also a false safety net, right? And well, we'll get into how we can overcome that. But lastly, despite the fact that it's a false sense of control or a false sense of security in this chaos, it provides us relief. I mean, the falsities make no difference. Is that a real word? Falsities? The bullshit we are giving ourselves still feels like a relief. That's why we do it. That's why we do the level 1, the level 2, the level 3, and then cycle between them. We jump from victimization to blame and anger to, well, I guess this might as well happen. And then we tend to just shuffle between the three until we're able to kind of pick our heads up and go, wait, this isn't a true sense of relief, nor is it an anchored sense of control or a reality-based sense of security. Like, I think we need a better plan here. You might be asking, why are we talking about this today, BC? You talk about business, you talk about work. Why does this matter? If you've not experienced blame in your workplace, please hire me. But secondly, blame goes so unnoticed and under the radar in a workplace. It is insidious. It is like the goop around the nozzle on the water cooler where everybody's gathering, right? And it will impact your your organization's success, your leadership ability, your productivity, your employees' cohesion and cultural engagement. Like it will poison your entire annual planning results success. It is a complete nightmare at work. And mostly because it's like this teeny little tiny skeleton hiding in the closet. When people are afraid of making mistakes, you cannot learn anything, right? You can't scale, you can't grow, you can't introduce new products or new strategies because blame shows up when someone makes a mistake. But when we are iterating and improving, we have to make mistakes in order to understand what works and what doesn't. This then creates this sort of underground railroad of gossip and chatter that now discourages people from taking risks or from trying something new or even speaking up about problems. So this is how it's going to impact your future. But additionally, if people are afraid of problems, they're not going to communicate them either. And so people will see an issue coming, on the horizon, but they don't want to bring it up to leadership. They don't want to bring it up to you. They don't want to talk about it with each other. They're either so concerned with their own security that they won't bring it up, or they recognize that the squeaky wheel gets fired. And the people who are just talking about problems are chastised and punished within the organization. And so the blame gets like internalized and or hidden. And so that's when you're getting this like bottom up communication that's completely bullshit. Or that's when like the same thing keeps happening over and over again and you feel like you're eating crazy pills. It's because your people are more worried about protecting themselves because you have a blame culture than they are about actually problem solving. And in order to problem solve, you have to identify and, I believe, celebrate problems. But this is the catch-22, and this is why I urge you to keep listening to this. No one knows how to do this. When any of my clients have new hires that have not worked in a culture like the ones that I'm seeing a lot of commonalities just in the people that I'm working with, where we teach them how to solve and celebrate problems, right? When you ask your employees, what's wrong? Why is this happening? What do you think could be done differently? Are there any obstacles that could get in the way of your success? So on and so forth. They're like deer in headlights. It's a completely new environment to be operating within where someone, one, just asks you what you think out of curiosity and appreciation. I mean, for any leadership to truly do that with their team members is fairly revolutionary. But two, if someone has never felt safe or secure or confident enough to answer that question, they're going to shut down. So this process doesn't happen immediately, which is why I really wanted to bring it to your attention, because all I see and feel and hear right now is blame chatter. But what we have to recognize is that inherently comes with negativity. Like it doesn't feel good. Let's just keep it as simple as possible. And if people don't feel good, they're not going to be creative. They're not going to take risks. They're not going to go out of their way to help somebody. They're not going to be looking for something that might affect the organization as a whole. They're just going to be trying to take care of themselves. So this is why what we're going to spend the rest of this episode on, I think, is so important. Now, before we get to what you can do about it, we got to address the energy behind the action, right? Because obviously blame doesn't feel good, but here's why. There is a cognitive cost to blame. Hear me out. Blame locks us into a reactive mindset. That's what the next episode's going to be about. There's a study published in the Journal of Applied Psychology, and it found that workplaces with a blame culture had lower innovation and collaboration. We just covered that, right? But why? Blame creates fear, which shuts down creative thinking. When you're busy defending yourself or pointing fingers, you're not solving problems. You're stuck in the past. And what we talk a lot about in the Energy Leadership Index is this energy, this either or thinking, this win or lose, the binary. It is compounding. It is spiralic, and it is distracting. It's fear-based. It's very energy intensive. And there are some benefits, like it gets shit done, but in a very threatening and forceful way. And if you think about your battery power every day and you wake up with 100%, anything that's fear-based is going to take an inordinate amount of your bandwidth in order to continue its forward momentum. And I mean, if you think about a physical wavelength, a slow moving wave is incredibly powerful. That's what these fear-based frequencies of feeling show up like. And you know that because when somebody walks into the room having a really bad fucking day, you can feel it. Just like you can feel the bass frequencies in a song. I mean, I'm pointing at my water bottle right now. You'll see the little ripples in your own water bottle. It'll knock things off shelves. Those are slow moving wavelengths. Fast, high frequency wavelengths, they are not quite as noticeable. They move through surfaces and they move across different materials a lot faster. And this is kind of how like creative energy and expansive energy and a growth mindset physically feels. It's less noticeable, but by no means is it any less effective. And so when we start to understand and feel and process and recognize and therefore release those slow moving, fear-based, negative experiences, it allows our battery to just stay full a lot longer. Blame blocks future action. Dr. Carol Dweck's research on fixed and growth mindset. I know you've heard the internet talking about having a growth mindset. Her research shows that blame reinforces a fixed mindset. The belief that problems are impossible and others are at fault reinforces itself. And this is where it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we're too worried about blaming someone else or even blaming ourselves, we're not thinking about, well, what could we do differently? Or how could we do this in a new and innovative way? Like, are we willing to take a risk? Well, no, because we're too obsessed with blame. So these questions like, what could I learn from this? Or what's the next step? Don't exist if our brain is just seeking to source the point of blame. And blame doesn't just affect the moment or our future. It strengthens these negative thought patterns that make it harder to approach any challenge. Because blame, again, fear-based, it is the opposite end of the spectrum from creativity and clarity. And again, if we're just inviting these experiences in and we're choosing these perspectives, it's going to very much narrow our focus. Creativity is a very lateral way of thinking, of opening up to ideas and possibilities, things that probably won't make any sense at first. I mean, everybody knows the first idea is usually pretty shit. But again, blame is going to negate even discovering the shit idea, let alone building upon it and iterating and riffing until we get to something that's like really fucking cool. Now, these strategies for actually solving problems do take effort. And so blame is the laziest approach to solving a problem. It doesn't address the root cause. It's like slapping duct tape on your car door when somebody's hit it, right? Like, it's not your fault someone hit your car, but there might be alternative solutions that aren't going to like pull the paint off or leave that like gummy like residue that duct tape does. And yeah, sure, it's a temporary solution. And if you don't have the means or the creative ideas around how to actually fix it, you're just going to slap it on there and create resentment and distraction in your experience. The underlying problem is still there. Your door's still broken. True problem solving requires reflection, collaboration, and experimentation. And these are things that blame acutely and actively avoids. Blame is also a way of sidestepping emotional discomfort. So psychologist Dr. Susan David calls this emotional rigidity. When we refuse to confront or feel our feelings, we project them outward. This not only damages relationships, but it also stifles our personal growth. So this is what I keep talking about with like level 1, level 2. You can hear how blame is a distraction. It is an energy drain. It is a creativity killer. And it is a default. It's so often just what we know, what we've grown up with, what we've been taught. And you'll hear people often, especially in corporate, talk about, well, I have awareness around this, but everybody else around me is still very much plugged into this matrix and seeking to blame. I truly believe knowing is half the battle. And if that's the case, you can just put your head down and keep doing your work. But what you're not going to buy into these experiences. You might smile, nod, agree. If that's your story, I can understand how challenging that would be. But because you're not going to accept the blame and you're not going to blame yourself, you're going to have a different experience. Blame is often energy directed at the past. It won't do anything right now. It is useful when approached like, what can I learn from this? But that's just a different question altogether. And so what you'll often hear me also talk about is how some of these different energy levels can like masquerade or dress up in different outfits. Level 5, which is where I believe like entrepreneurship and leadership really, they are very effective with a level 5 perspective. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go watch the energy leadership episodes. Do you like how I like talk? Am I talking shit about my own stuff? No, I feel like I'm just repeating myself, which is why I say it in that voice. But anyhow, level 5 can go, hey, what's up? Why, how did we get here? What happened? But it feels completely different than someone who is experiencing a lot of level 2 energy. And so they're seeking blame. They are bullies. They are angry. They are frustrated. They're impatient. They're resentful. And they're like, yo, what happened here? What, like, how do we get here? Who do I need to talk to about this? And even though you're having the exact same conversation, they're going to yield completely different discoveries. And everybody's going to walk away from that feeling one kind of way. You know, they're going to feel intimidated and fearful and potentially like they really fucked up, or they're going to feel curious and challenged and like there's something we need to discover here. And I'm excited for that process. So we default to blame because of our cultural conditioning, how we were raised, the culture and communities which we grew up in, the dominant cultures, the educational systems, the languages that we speak, all of it, right? And especially the workplace within which you're operating. Many of us were raised in environments where blame was the norm. And that's just it. It's just quite honestly what we're all used to. We also have a fear of vulnerability. So owning a mistake requires vulnerability. And that is inherently threatening. And again, especially if you're in a community or within a culture or a workplace that is blame-based, because if you own it, there could be negative repercussions. And that's scary. And lastly, impatience. Blame will give you an answer a hell of a lot faster than getting to the root of the issue. It offers quick emotional relief and responsibility, co-creation, process improvement. It takes time and effort. Okay, so that, even my like shoulder is like, damn girl, that was heavy. Let's talk about what we can do about this. Just because blame is easy, it doesn't mean it's inevitable. There are better and more impactful alternatives. So let's talk about some of the surprising alternatives to blame. These are what I think are some game-changing approaches I've definitely experimented with in my own workplaces, but I've worked with hundreds of clients on also implementing in their own, and even some employees or people getting hired at impactful positions in new organizations. There are plenty of things we can do instead of blaming, especially if you find yourself in a dynamic that is defaulting to blame. I'd be curious actually if you've tried any of these. If you have, let me know. You can comment. Yeah, that's probably the best way. Or you can email me or socials or whatever it is. But okay, so firstly, and this term was like pretty, I don't know, this was one of those internet buzz terms recently, but radical responsibility. So radical responsibility means owning your part in every situation, even if it's not your fault. It works because, and this was actually, I was surprised, a Harvard Business Review study. They literally studied radical responsibility. It shows that leaders, and again, we are all leaders, we lead ourselves first. Leaders who practice responsibility over blame foster stronger team morale and achieve better outcomes. So at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. If you have not just a growth mindset, but a leadership mindset, and I know you do because you're listening to this, you my people, you are going to be the big person in the room. And sometimes, especially people who've been inculcated by this blame culture, they're going to need to see that in real time. Hey, look, I recognize this is my ship we are sailing, and y'all are my crew. And I put in bad coordinates. That's on me. I also recognize you might not have had the resources. You might not have had the tools that you needed, whatever it might be, right? Like I truly 100% believe nobody shows up to do a bad job or fuck up. Now, they might have a slightly different definition of like a good job and success, but again, that's on you as a leader to start really filtering for and defining, and then giving people the opportunities to actually meet those standards. That's a different episode. So radical responsibility can be experimented with and introduced by simply changing your language around problems. So when something goes wrong, hit pause for a second, take a knee, and ask, what was my role in this, if any? If not, how could I possibly have contributed to this regardless, right? Like, I'm just going to pretend I did have some type of influence here. What could that have been? And knowing what I know now, what might I do differently next time? That's all radical responsibility is. It's just owning it. This happened. We all played a part in it, whether we were like hands-on or hands-off. So then that leads us to collaborative problem solving. So instead of assigning blame, shift the focus to collective solutions. How can we fix this together? What ideas do you have? Again, you're going to need to give people a little bit of space and a little bit of practice with this, because firstly, they're used to something and someone just getting blamed, and they sure as shit don't want that to be themselves. But secondly, when you ask them for ideas, they might, this is going to sound weird, but they might not have learned yet how to think these things through. And so again, as the leader, you really get to demonstrate this. Okay, let's assume this was my fault. Here's how I contributed. Here's what I would do differently next time. Does anyone think that would make any kind of a difference? And if so, what do you think might happen? A really powerful prompt is pretend. You're asking people then to get into a creative space. Imagine. We might not know the answer yet. That's why we continue to experience this problem. So let's pretend we did know the answer. Imagine we were already on the other side of this. What might have occurred differently? When the next time an issue arises, bring everybody together, and you'll hear this often called a post-mortem or a debrief. So after the thing, and this is when we get like really tuned into growth mindset, right? Something didn't even need to go wrong. What we're doing is we're changing our culture to look for problems and what went wrong, and shifting to, let's just assume we can always do better. And we're not, this isn't, again, burnout culture. We're not trying to create a false standard of perfect that we're striving for. But this happens a lot in creative organizations. There's just this willingness to commit to a high quality control process where we're just open with asking, what could go better next time? How could I have stretched myself in this moment? So lastly, and just to kind of go through it again. So first, we're accepting radical responsibility. Second, we are inviting collaborative problem solving. We're bringing everybody together to try and figure this out. Then we get to nail it down with the next action question. So this is a simple but powerful tool. And when we do hear blame start to creep in around the edges, which is, look, it's going to, okay? It's quite honestly how all of us have been programmed. And so especially when we are stretching ourselves, when we're feeling challenged or threatened by external circumstances, how many times have you heard somebody say, well, the economy is shit right now, or who knows what's going to happen with this new administration, or the entire world is a dumpster fire. Like that is blaming things, right? But interrupt those trains of thought by simply saying, what's the next best thing I could do? If I were to take one action step to improving this situation, what could that be? Action breaks the blame cycle, just straight up. It redirects your energy away from this level 1, 2 drain towards some level 3, 4, maybe even 5 actual steps forward. Dr. James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, is he a doctor? Is that a typo? Is he a doctor? Okay, anywho. Small, immediate actions build momentum and motivation. And I've talked a lot about this with goal theory as well. When things feel insurmountable, intractable, impossible, it really helps to break it up and go, okay, sure, this has never been done before, but let's just focus on this one particular section and the finite amount of steps that will be within this, because this part's controllable. And I talk about this as being action gear. You know, you've broken down the impossible into doable tasks because your brain will literally shift into, oh, I can do that. That's a fantastic place to start. So blame will feel good in the moment, and it's a trap. It's a trap. It wastes energy, it stifles creativity, and it will poison your potential. Instead, try radical responsibility, collaborating in creativity, and using this kind of next action. What's the next best thing I could do? Action gear to redirect your energy towards progress. I think the biggest takeaway I stumbled upon in researching this was that blame is a luxury. Like, it takes a lot of privilege to just stand around and point fingers. When I had that aha moment, I recognized there's a reason why some people are out there just getting shit done. And it's because they're not interested in being in a position where they can sit back on their haunches or high horse and be like, well, it's them. Or even like, it's me. I have so much power and impact and influence. Like, it's all my fault. I mean, that's where I always go. Because control is such a thing for me. Or at least let's say it was a thing for me, right? But I would love to think that I have control over the universe, and I just fucking don't. And sometimes really shitty things happen, and they might have happened 10 times before. And that might feel like a giant fucking mistake on my part to not have seen that coming. But what do I get from that? Like, what's the fucking benefit of blaming yourself? I think for a while there, that showed up like radical responsibility. That's not what radical responsibility is about at all. Radical responsibility is not, this is all my fault. Radical responsibility is, there's something that can be done here. And I will step up and just simply say, I'm willing to explore. That's radical responsibility. Okay. So yeah, the next time you're tempted to point fingers, what is that? When you're pointing a finger, there's 4 pointing back at you or 3 pointing back, whatever it is. Just remember, you do have the power to choose. That's what my loop is about today. And that's it. That's all I got. I feel like we got this over the line. I did mention the loop. You should be in my loop. It's my weekly newsletter where I just kind of jibber jabber about all the things that have come up for me and for my clients. And it's interesting that I kind of ended this one on, you always have the power to choose. And that is, if there's one thing you take away, just remember there's always a choice. This is always a multiple choice quiz. That's how you get out of that level 1, 2, and up into different energy levels that will be more effective in enabling you to connect to the results that you seek. So yeah, stay curious, my friend, stay compassionate, and just remember, progress will always beat blame in terms of your own success. So I love you. Thanks for being here.